Greetings everyone, my name is Rain and I have been playing them here games, and welcome to today's discussion. Why I'm not worried about Links Awakening HD Remake. Nintendo really has mastered the art of building up hype and maintaining expectations consistently throughout the year. Maintaining relevancy is no longer an issue for Nintendo. They have finally become the world's greatest magician. While keeping our attention on little bits of information being drip-fed through a straw from the metaphorical bottle of water we call the internet, Nintendo knows exactly when us hamsters need a refill. See, take a look at this. What we're looking at here is an image of the 2019 Direct that we had in February. If you look here, we got a Super Mario Maker 2 announcement in there. I'm going to be making a video very soon on that, so come back and check that out. I'm going to be covering a lot of stuff that you may not have seen in other videos. But if you look next to it, we also have a remake of Links Awakening coming out, and there's a large amount of controversy surrounding this topic as far as the graphic style, what's going to be in it, is it going to be new enough, is it going to provide enough content, and I want to go over that in this video. So it looks like it's going to be another all-nighter from me. Sit back, relax, and let's dive into this. Before we all just dive headfirst into this, we should all probably know exactly what we're diving into, because it could be gross and have jellyfish or something. The Legend of Zelda Timeline. So let's back it up, and I'm going to try and skim right over the top of this just to make my point and move on. I would love to sit here and talk about the Zelda Timeline, but that alone would probably take all day. And last I checked, we're all a bunch of vaccinated apes with attention spans of about 13.5 minutes, so I'll make this quick. Nintendo officially confirms that Breath of the Wild lies at the end of the timeline. For those of you who may be unaware, the Zelda timeline is somewhat confusing and basically unimportant to each individual game itself, meaning you don't have to play all the Zelda games in order to understand the conflict within the game that you're playing. However, it is worth noting that they are linked together more than a franchise, like for example, Final Fantasy. For those of you who are die-hard fans, you might be asking me, Rain, if Breath of the Wild is at the end of the timeline, to which timeline are you referring? And to that I say, well, it's at the end of whichever timeline you want, really. I mean, for the sake of not remaking countless other YouTube creator videos, here's the skinny. There was an interview conducted by Fumitsu magazine with Zelda producer and director about where Breath of the Wild fits in the timeline. I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to go ahead and read the full article. It's kind of old news now, but you can go ahead and check it out. It's still there. Basically, in this interview, the producer and director of Zelda say in a cryptic sidestep that Zelda timeline is constantly evolving and being added to, and things get shifted around from time to time, given new quote-unquote history, aka the games, that bring new lore to the franchise. For example, those of you who didn't know, Link's Awakening was moved to happen before the Oracle games rather than afterward. This was done theoretically to squash the rumor that Link from A Link to the Past died at sea. There was a time span of 10,000 years between Link's first journey in The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword and Link's final journey in Breath of the Wild, meaning there are potentially countless adventures across 3 separate timelines within the Zelda universe, all of which are connected to each other. The Zelda timeline is a history-defying, constantly evolving ball of paradoxes that even old Doc Brown doesn't even want to go anywhere near. But what does this have anything to do with Link's Awakening HD Remake? Well, I'm glad you asked. If you're not in the know about Switch game releases, or even if you are, there is a reoccurring pattern, I think, that I've kind of picked up on, and I think it's worth mentioning. Also worth mentioning, there are a few titles that I left out that were filler games. They were left there intentionally for us to keep our noses buried until the mind-blowing reveal or release of the big game came out. I left them off the list because they lacked a certain specific chibi-like quality and didn't quite fit the criteria. But hey, for shits and giggles, and to get my shameless self-plug promotion out for the day, go down and leave me a comment about games that you think were just filler games. I'd be interested to see a more broad spectrum of what you guys have noticed as well as what I've noticed. And also be sure to drop a like for this transcendent transition technique to the titled topic thereof. Swoosh. What I've come to realize is all major chibi art style games, remake or otherwise, were preemptive launches to hold us over until the real deal title came out that we're all waiting for. Here are some examples of chibi style games that have launched to hold us over for the main course. Pokemon Quest was announced and released May 30th, 2018, just before E3, which, as we all remember, was full of Pokemon Let's Go teasers, playable demos on the floor, with a release date of November 16th later that same year. Final Fantasy Maxima HD Switch Remake was announced and dropped November 6, 2018. This was paired with other big news from developing studio Square Enix that other older Final Fantasy games were coming to the Switch, primarily Final Fantasy X and X-2, releasing the following year, April 16th, 2019. Now, this next one is kind of sort of stretching it, but it kind of fits it, so I'm not counting it, but I really am. Brawlhalla was released on November 6th, 2018, as a 2D chibi-esque kind of game, as a fighting game, and what do you know, it's just like Smash. To hold us over for Smash Ultimate, which was to be released 1 month later on December 7th, 2018. And now we have this awesome reveal of Legend of Zelda Link's Reawakening being portrayed in the highly subjective, beautiful art style of chibi-esque design.
Well, Rain, I know you're not about to say what I think you're about to say. Two and a partial metaphorical thoughts don't make a hypothetical pattern, bro.
Well, luckily for the sake of entertainment, I'm a moron, and I appreciate you hearing me out this far. But hey,
Listen!
Here's why I'm not worried about Link's Awakening being chibi-esque. It has nothing to do with Wind Waker. I don't know. I've seen some comments in other videos and people comparing the attitudes and mentalities of consumers today to that of the market 16 years ago for Wind Waker. And albeit it's notable, I just don't see them on the same playing field. One was a brand new entry to the franchise right after that epic GameCube tech demo of Link putting the epic smackdown on Ganondorf, and what was debatably the most sexually arousing experience Nintendo's ever given its fans. Sorry, Bayonetta. And the other one was just a simple remaster. But I digress. With this game being chibi-esque in nature, I strongly believe it will serve, a dual purpose, just like the other stepping stone chibi games of recent past, which, ironically enough, is where that handy-dandy little rumor floating around about the next big 3D Zelda game comes into play. What we already know is that the creators of Breath of the Wild have already ended development and have since moved on to the next big Zelda project. And that was news like a year or so ago, which is why you sat through my painful deliverance in Reader's Digest version of Legend of Zelda Timeline. As I said back a few minutes ago, Zelda producer already verified that Breath of the Wild was at the end of the timeline. But which one? How can we possibly have a Breath of the Wild 2 if Breath of the Wild 1 was at the end of the timeline? Well, personally, with the exception of Zelda 2, just for being the second game they released, and Four Swords due to having co-op multiplayer, never in the history of any Zelda game has there ever been a number or Roman numeral in the title of the game, so I don't know where people are getting the idea of Breath of the Wild 2. I mean, wouldn't that just be Breath of the same old shit we just played? And secondly, Hakuna your Deku nuts. We're getting there. The next big 3D Zelda game could possibly go full-on Majora's Mask and reuse assets, ideas, themes, locations, textures, audio, and graphical engines. But what does that leave for the game itself in terms of validity in the timeline if Breath of the Wild was the end? Well, it would probably just do exactly what Majora's Mask did in relation to Ocarina of Time. It would just move the adventure into a parallel timeline because, oh yeah, those exist too. There is still the possibility that Breath of the Wild was meant to converge all three timelines back into one timeline, to make things simpler moving forward in the future of the franchise, but that doesn't exactly sit well with me either. I seriously doubt that the next 3D Zelda will have anything to do with Breath of the Wild or be anywhere near it in the timeline. Breath of the Wild was segregated at the end of the timeline for a reason, and adding more to that would only complicate and confuse things, but also beg me to ask the question, why not just make more Breath of the Wild DLC content if all you're doing is adding quest lines and dungeons and shit? So to wrap this wacky and crazy theory up into a bite-sized Zelda-rito, don't worry about Link's Awakening Remake. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exactly like it was 26 years ago. But what I'm after is what comes next. I expect that mystery will be unveiled closer to the release of Link's Awakening to keep the hype train rolling. Thank you for watching. I've been Rain, and you've been asleep this entire time. Get back to work. Your lunch break ended 10 minutes ago. I'll see you in the next one.